You may be thinking it's a good idea to buy a loss-making business, but before you embark on a risky entrepreneurial journey of this nature, make sure you first know and understand the risks and challenges involved. One of my businesses became loss-making, which unfortunately coincided with being diagnosed with cancer and being given months to live. Don't worry, that was in 2014, so I obviously survived. I will admit that I struggled with what I faced. I had to ask myself some serious questions, one of which was, what's more important, money or life? As a result, I lost hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars in the process, whilst trying to keep the business afloat, at the same time as fighting for my life in hospital. It's strange that it affected me in this way, because I had previously taken a business from barely breaking even to being very profitable. I put it down to being given months to live. I think my priorities changed in that moment, and whilst I tried, my heart was no longer in it. This was the catalyst that led me ultimately to sell this business. The point I want to stress to you, and for you to learn from my experience, is that by me having gone through these challenges in business twice, is that it takes a lot of energy, effort, and entrepreneurial know-how to turn a business around. So please don't underestimate what it will take, otherwise you could find yourself in deep water. You could lose all your money. With that said, let me take you through the 12 things that are key if you are considering buying a loss-making business, which are as follows. Number one, you need to understand why the business is making losses. Because if you don't know why the business is losing money, how can you possibly know how to fix it? On this first point, you should ask yourself the question, what makes you think you have what it takes to change the company's fortunes when the current owner hasn't been able to fix the problem? After all, they may have owned the business for many years, and they probably understand the business more than most. It may be as simple as they've run out of money, and the banks are not willing to support a loss-making business, not necessarily because it can't be done, but due to a lack of collateral for the loan. Number two, after you've established why the business is making losses, you now need to work out how to fix the problem. You need a plan of how you will achieve the turnaround, because it doesn't always follow that just because you know why the business is making losses, you know how to fix the problem. It's important you understand why the business is making losses, and you must have your well thought through plan of action to fix the problem before you buy the business, as this will definitely not be something to work out as you go along after you've bought the business. Also be aware that just because a business is making losses, it doesn't necessarily mean it can't be overvalued. During my search to find a business to buy, I came across a food wholesaler and an ice cream manufacturer that were both loss-making businesses. Both businesses, in my opinion, have been way overvalued by the brokers. For example, the food wholesalers was valued at £500,000 no less, which is even after it hadn't made profits for a number of years. The owner tried to convince me that this was the value of its goodwill. That made no sense to me. I did look at both opportunities as they had come across my desk, but when I looked at each business, I couldn't immediately see how I could fix the problem in either one and make them profitable. But ultimately, what I really wanted was to buy a profitable business with immediate cash flow. Number three, you need to have an idea of an estimate of how long it's going to take to fix the problem and to turn the company into a profitable cash flowing business, which leads on to point four. Number four, once you've established the timescales necessary to fix a loss-making problem, you'll then need to quantify the total losses and hence the total loss of money the business will incur over this estimated time frame, and therefore the amount of cash that's needed to turn around the business. The best way to quantify the cash injection needed is to use cash flow forecasting software. Plus, the added benefit of using cash flow forecasting software is the ability to run various scenarios of the business's working capital cycle. This will include changing customer payment terms, changing supplier payment terms, and adjusting stock or inventory levels and stock ordering cycles, which will affect the levels of working capital requirements for the business. Changing the working capital cycle will ultimately affect the amount of cash required to fund the business's turnaround. You can also use the cash flow software to review alternative funding solutions, such as invoice financing too. When you're doing your calculations, always build in an extra time buffer and an additional money buffer, because these things always take longer than expected and take more money than you think. Number 5, after you've estimated the timescales, quantified the losses over this time frame, and you've calculated the required cash injection needed to fund the business's losses during this period, you need to make sure you have available the necessary funds, be it your own cash or cash funded from elsewhere. At least if you prepared cash flow forecasts, you'll have something to present to investors if you are seeking outside investment for your turnaround project. Number 6, you must be able to afford to lose the money needed to turn the company from a loss-making business into a profitable one. If you can't afford to lose the money, don't do it. You don't want to invest the only money you have, or even a large portion of your personal wealth, on an amount you really can't afford to lose. Or if you plan on using other people's money, make sure they understand the risk involved in the transaction. And be very careful, because you could end up losing more than just the money you invest in the business to turn it around, which leads to the next point. Number 7, you need to use the right corporate structure for buying any business to protect yourself, which is even more important when you buy a loss-making business. Having the right structure in place will avoid you losing more money than the amount you invest in the transaction. With this in mind, if you borrow part or all of the money needed for the turnaround, don't offer personal guarantees on any money that's borrowed, because if it all goes terribly wrong, the lender will come after you for the amount unpaid and guaranteed. Number 8, make sure you consider the ramifications and consequences of trading whilst insolvent, which might be the case with a loss-making business, as this can have all sorts of knock-on effects on you personally. If you're found to be trading whilst insolvent, you may be held personally liable for the debts incurred by the business, even if the business is a limited liability company. So be careful and seek professional advice on this point. Number 9, understand that it's not going to be an easy task to turn around a business, and you need to ask yourself whether you've got the nerve to take on this type of challenge. Never underestimate what it takes to turn a loss-making business around. Also understand that this may involve problems with employees leaving a sinking ship. Suppliers may not be supportive of what's happening, and if customers get wind of what's going on, they may also take their business elsewhere too. Banks are often unlikely to support this type of situation unless they can see a well-constructed business plan with supporting profit and cash flow forecasts, and that any lending is to be secured on a suitable asset or assets. Be aware that it takes a very determined and experienced entrepreneur to turn a business from making losses to making profits. Number 10, do you have the necessary business experience needed for a business turnaround? And do you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur in the first place? Make sure this isn't your very first venture into the business world, as it could all end in tears very quickly. Your job may involve business turnarounds, but just because you've worked for someone else doing business turnarounds, this doesn't necessarily mean you can do it for yourself with a business you buy. Be aware that it becomes a very different transaction to pull off when it's your own money at stake, versus knowing that whatever happens with the transaction, you'll still get paid your salary at the end of the month regardless. Number 11, to improve your chances of success, you should ideally have sector experience. as this will help in understanding why the business is making losses, and it will give you the necessary experience to know how to fix the problem. Plus, it may also mean you have the right contacts in the sector to help you in the turnaround. Number 12, and finally, you must be prepared to lose all the money you invest in the transaction on the basis that it doesn't go to plan and the business ultimately fails. Your reason for you to consider the purchase of a loss-making business might be because you don't have the money to buy a profitable one. But you may not have considered the fact that you'll need money to fund the business losses, and you'll need to inject cash to bridge its negative cash flow gap until it becomes profitable. But if this is your reason for wanting to buy a loss-making business, you may want to consider the alternative ways you can finance the purchase of a profitable business instead, like using seller financing. I hope this helps you on your journey to finding a business to buy. And if you have any questions on this topic about buying a business or in any other aspect about the process involved in buying a business, please drop a comment below. And always remember that no question is a stupid question. If you don't know it, you don't know it. And by having the answer to a question you have might be what it takes to move you to the very next step in your journey to buy a business. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you on my next video.